Welcome to the Speaking of Writers podcast. I'm Steve Richards. Today, we're stepping behind the camera to explore the making of one of the most influential films in Hollywood history, Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. Rear Window remains a landmark in cinema, experimental yet wildly successful, provocative yet produced under the strict morality of the Hays Code era. Joining me is Jennifer O'Callaghan, entertainment journalist, on-air reporter, producer, red carpet veteran, and now author of the deeply researched and riveting new book, Rear Window, The Making of a Hitchcock Masterpiece in the Golden Age of Hollywood. Jennifer opens the blinds on the film's creation, Hitchcock's artistic daring, Jimmy Stewart's reinvention, Grace Kelly at her pinnacle, and how Rear Window anticipated today's digital culture of surveillance, voyeurism, and constant observation. Jennifer, welcome to the Speaking of Writers
Thank you.
podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Steve.
It's great to have you here. So, what was the spark that led you to write a full deep dive into Rear Window?
Well, going back to the beginning, I mean, I had been raised on a steady diet of classic films since I was probably about the age of 5.
Hmm.
My dad had, he had me in front of the television watching the 39 Steps, and Some Like It Hot. So I was also getting into a bit of, not just Hitchcock, but Billy Wilder, and then all the
Yes.
MGM, Julie Garland musicals. So it was something that was very normalized for me at a very, very young age. And it was something that I think I always took a source of comfort from it, and just as I grew older and became an adult, that never changed for me. And as you mentioned, I was an entertainment reporter. I did red carpet work, and I think that it was so funny because the times when I got the most starstruck when I interviewed celebrities were the more classic age celebrities like Liza Minnelli or Marion Seldes or someone like
Mhm.
that. So I think I knew that I wanted to take my journalism career into a different medium and a different direction, and I always knew that I wanted to write a book, and I had seen that there were I was a big fan of film books, but not just of film books, but of, these making of film books that had become more popular, I'd say, within probably more so in the last 15 years or so, that these types of books have really been, in the market a little more prominently. And, I'd seen books like, there had been one on the making of Vertigo. I had seen a really great one by Sam Wasson on the making of Breakfast at Tiffany's. I was reading these books, becoming inspired by them because a lot of these writers were, they were making it really interesting in the fact that they were bringing sort of a narrative, story-driven feel to, this nonfiction academia. And I was actually, as a reader, was looking for to learn more about Rear Window because Rear Window had always been my favorite Hitchcock film, and couldn't really find one that told the story that I really, all the juice that I really wanted to know about. So I thought, well, I'm a writer. I guess I'm gonna give it a shot, and and here we are now.
Yeah, the movie is now over 70 years old. Why do you think Rear
Yeah.
Window continues to resonate so powerfully with modern audiences?
I think it's the fact that Alfred Hitchcock was so tuned into human nature and human emotion. And that's something that just doesn't change over time. It's
Mm.
these feelings of loneliness that people experience, that Miss Lonely Hearts experienced in the film. Difficulties in relationships, the some of the conflict that was going on between Grace Kelly and Jimmy Stewart's character. The voyeurism, just that's such a part of human nature. The fact that, we have, reality shows based around voyeurism like Big Brother. We have
Right.
on the flip side, we have worries about voyeurism, whether that's, being afraid that, your cookies or, like your Instagram is like listening to you or something,
Mhm.
or, whether that's, going back to, the Cold War era, and also, even it was also coming out of a very paranoid sort of time when Hitchcock made Rear Window, because that was the whole red haze scare, with the whole communist witch hunt that was really prevalent in Hollywood. So, I mean, it couldn't have come out at a more opportune time, I think.
Yeah, you mentioned Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly. I want to talk about those two for a bit here. You uncovered new details about Jimmy Stewart's personal journey. He re-entered Hollywood here after active World War II combat. How did the
Yeah.
war change him, Jennifer? And how did Rear Window help reshape his screen persona?
Well, I spoke with his daughter, Kelly Stewart Harcourt, and she was very generous with me in his artistic journey, and just coming back from the war, and how he kind of got together with Hitchcock. So basically when he came back from the war, he had made it all the way to, being a colonel, and a bomber pilot. And he, when the war ended, he came back to Hollywood, straight back to Hollywood, and I think he felt a bit lost. He wasn't sure if this was something. I think when you go through something that traumatic, such a, as being a part of World War II, like, when you come back to real, this life that where everyone's telling you to, move forward, let's go towards happier days. They didn't really have a ton of counseling back then for, traumatized soldiers, the way they would today. And I think that he wasn't sure. I think he wasn't even sure if he wanted to continue acting. It maybe it seemed almost a little bit irrelevant to him. But then he got put back on the path by Frank Capra when he did It's a Wonderful Life, of course, as we all know. And I think that's what really set him back. And then he kind of realized, this is something I can actually do to help the public. This is a gift I have that I can share with people, and it makes people happy. So, maybe this is a way to contribute. And I think as far as Hitchcock, I mean, he first got together with Hitchcock in 1948 to do Rope. And I think Hitchcock saw some really interesting depths to him that perhaps, when he was doing his more, boy next door roles pre-war, maybe that wasn't something that other directors, might have seen in him, or it might that who knows, maybe that might have not developed in him yet. So I think he saw this, affable, lovable kind of guy. I guess today's equivalent would be Tom Hanks. But then he also had these hidden depths, like this hidden darkness to him that he was able to show in nuances with his acting. And I think that that was what Hitchcock really wanted to hone into. And I think he just knew with Rear Window, he had the right guy for Rear Window, because I mean, can you imagine some other actors playing that role, like certain
Hmm.
other types of actors back then? Like they could have come off a lot more, lecherous, or, it would have been such a different energy, right? That would have come off. But the fact that it was Jimmy Stewart and everyone loves Jimmy Stewart, of course the audience is going to stick with him, even if he's doing, things that are slightly, not the most moral,
Yeah.
like, as he was doing in the film. So I think that, he really was perfectly cast in the role.
Yeah, Stewart's collaboration, as you've touched on with Hitchcock, was pivotal. What made them such an effective creative team?
The fact that they were both craftsmen, the fact that, so Jimmy Stewart, he wasn't, I mean, he also came from an era that wasn't really big on method acting, right? And as I think, as you probably have read in other Hitchcock books, like Hitchcock was not the hugest fan of method acting either. And I think, Jimmy Stewart, he didn't even necessarily see acting as an art per se. Like I think he saw it as, just this craft. Like he was a workhorse, and he was going in, he was doing his job, he was coming home. And his daughter said that, when he came home from work, he didn't actually talk about his work. He never brought his work home with him. Like he was home in time for dinner, and there wasn't a ton of shop talk around the table. It was talking about family stuff. So I think he kept that very separate. And then I think with Hitchcock, he was just he had a very specific way of working too. That, he a lot of the time, he was very into storyboarding, as everybody knows. And then he was also very into, it was almost like he had the film like cut in his mind before, the camera was even loaded with film.
Hmm.
It was very meticulous. So I think the two of them just had immense respect for each other, and they really jived well together as actor and director.
Let's talk Grace Kelly, often cited as the epitome of classic Hollywood glamour in this film. What
Yeah.
did you learn about her performance and her partnership with Edith Head?
So her and Edith Head actually became lifelong friends. The two of them just got on really well together. I think Edith Head just, I think Grace Kelly to begin with was Edith Head's favorite time at that time anyway, in the early 50s. She was her favorite to dress because she saw Grace Kelly as just, the perfect figure, the perfect 50s beauty in her mind, right? And I think that their partnership on Rear Window, just if those stunning numbers, that she walks in, especially I think the introduction of Lisa Fremont when she first walks in with that tulle sort of white dress with the black embroidery and then the black bodice,
Mm.
and then they always had her in the pearls, and then and then I think there were five main costumes that were really, there weren't actually that many costumes in Rear Window, but I think that's almost what made it kind of more special because, you had to say so much more with one costume then. So I think, and then that relationship obviously continued with other films that they, like with the next Hitchcock film that they did together, To Catch a Thief. So then that was sort of catapulted, towards the French Riviera. So then that was her on the beach lounging in her, one piece yellow suit, and then her ice blue sort of Grecian goddess gown. So I think it was like that was also a match made in heaven. You'd have to say the same way it was with Jimmy Stewart and Hitchcock.
How did the dynamic between Kelly and Stewart contribute to the film's emotional tension?
Well, they both had immense respect for each other. They got on so well. They actually, I believe, so his daughter Kelly told me that even when Grace Kelly left Hollywood, to be obviously the Princess of Monaco, um, she would still send, Christmas cards every year, or if she saw him in a film where she thought he did an excellent job, she'd always reach out and tell him. So they had a genuine friendship, together. Like there was nothing fake about their friendship. So I think that really helped as far as, being great scene partners together. Because the majority of the film, it's either him sitting by himself just reacting to things, or or else she's like his primary scene partner. So just the fact, I think he had a lot of respect for her because, she was very much younger than him at the time, and it's kind of easy to forget that she was only kind of in her early 20s at that time because she seems so much more mature, when you watch her in that film. Like she just has this
Yeah.
regalness, this restraint about her that you kind of forget. Like, oh wow, she was only like, 23, 24 here. Um, and I think he had a lot of respect for the fact that she just carried herself like a true professional. That, he took note that she was kind to everyone on set, and that she really worked hard at what she did. She really worked hard at her craft. If she hadn't become the Princess of Monaco, I believe she probably would have gone, besides Hollywood. I mean, she would have kept her Hollywood career going, but I think she would have conquered the stage too, the Broadway stage. She had been in one Broadway show like at the beginning of her career, but I think she would have really, taken the stage by storm and been winning awards for that as well. So she was a very serious actress.
This movie, Rear Window, is famous for its contained setting, one apartment looking out at a courtyard. What were the challenges and creative opportunities of this restricted environment?
This was really interesting. The fact that he was doing, it's a risk to, or it was a risk back then, especially to do a one set, a one set sort of film. But of course, we know Hitchcock, he had done one set films in the past. He'd done Lifeboat. He'd also done Rope,
Right?
of course, with Jimmy Stewart. But Rope, to me, whenever I watch Rope, it seems like it's a sign of things to come with Rear Window. It's almost like a smaller sort of version of Rear Window, like when you see the sky change, from day to dusk to night and all
Mm,
that. Um, but I think what was really technically interesting about Rear Window was because obviously it was a much, more technically ambitious project. They had to come up with a lot of really interesting and revolutionary ways to make this work. Because, when you're watching certain scenes and you're seeing the neighbors across the way, and there's like a synchronization of the way they're all sort of acting together. Like the camera's panning up, in one scene, like you see the wedding, the newly married people, in the top, and then you go down, you see Miss Torso
yes.
dancing, and then it moves over to Thorwald, the bad guy. So that there's like, there's sort of like a synchronization happening here. And that wasn't just by accident. That happened because Hitchcock was standing on the other side. So Hitchcock's like area of operation was actually on Jimmy Stewart's side of the set. And what he had a microphone in the wall, like against the wall, and he had a button that he could push for each of these actors, and each of these actors was wearing an earpiece. So he could direct them instead of like, he's like, I'm not going to be like yelling across with a megaphone, like that would be ridiculous. So this was something that the assistant director, Herbert Coleman, had come up with some of the sound crew. And so that was sort of a genius thing to do, because the only time before then that anyone had ever used, anything like that, any sort of earpiece like that, was when they had dancers, like, dance scenes, and then the dancers had to like listen to something for, to have a tempo going, so that they could get, the right steps. So it was really revolutionary at that time to do that. And then of course the just physically, the set as a piece, it actually was built from, so the ground was actually the basement of the set, or of the stage, sorry, of the sound stage. So it was, they had to build down, or they had to dig down into there, and then, it was just really interesting. So then the if this makes sense, Jimmy Stewart's, um, his apartment was actually at ground level. So it was a very, very complex technical sort of operation that was going on there.
What was the most challenging part of researching this book?
Getting the interviews,
Mm,
definitely getting the interviews. A film that's made, like you said, 71 years ago. When I was writing it, it had been made 69 and a half years ago.
mm,
Trying, most of the people who were involved with the film, of course, are no longer with us,
right.
right? So that was my challenge in finding the people who are with us, who, had a strong association, whether that was through work or a relation, like, or somebody, who had also was lucky enough to speak with the restoration team who restored Rear Window in 99, 2000. Jim Katz. So it was really, and Robert Harris, sorry, I apologize. So it was really, just trying to find those people. And it took a lot of work, just to track them down. And once I did, though, it felt really good. It was very nice,
Mm.
very rewarding, getting to speak with Jimmy Stewart's daughter, getting to speak with, Grace Kelly's nephew and her cousin, who she was very close to, John Lehman. He was also Secretary of the Navy during the Reagan era. Like speaking with, some of her friend's daughter, when like it was really great to get these really personal stories that you wouldn't find anywhere else. And it's just fantastic and very rewarding in the end.
Yeah, that had to be. What do you hope readers, film lovers, historians, Hitchcock fans walk away with after reading this book?
I hope that they are able to still fully understand the relevance of the film today. Like that this film is just as relevant in 2025 as it was in 1954. I mean, that's really what I was trying to say with the book. And another thing I wanted to point out is that I really want to introduce the younger generation to the film. It's just with film, it's just very, like the way the film industry is today, things are so different. Like a lot of the time we don't even watch films in the theaters anymore. It's not really a communal experience at the moment unless it's, during Oscar season or something special going on. So it would just be really lovely to, introduce this film and, maybe people might want to watch it together and, have a Rear Window movie night and just to celebrate what a masterpiece it was, because I think it really deserves that.
Yeah, Jennifer, a lot of people today will watch the short clips of, in this ADD world, the short clips of
And
old movies.
TikTok.
And TikTok, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's Jennifer
Yeah.
O'Callaghan.
So
The new book is Rear Window, The Making of a Hitchcock Masterpiece in the Golden Age of Hollywood. It's an extraordinary dive into one of cinema's greatest films and a fresh exploration of the cultural, creative, and political forces that shaped it. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me.
thank you so much for having me, Steve. This has been so much fun.
And thank you for watching. For more conversations with authors, journalists, historians, and storytellers, follow us on your favorite podcast platform. This is the Speaking of Writers podcast. Until next time, I'm Steve Richards.